The officiant lowered his voice and looked straight past the bride. "We can't continue without her signature." For 1 second, nobody moved. Then every face in the room turned toward me. Not toward my son. Not toward the bride. Toward me, sitting 3 rows back in a pale blue dress I had chosen because it looked respectful, not memorable. I remember my future daughter-in-law's mouth opening slightly. Not wide. Just enough to show she had not expected this. My son half rose, then stopped. The organ player took her hands off the keys. And in that sudden silence, with hydrangeas lining the aisle and church light falling across polished shoes, I understood something with complete clarity. They had planned a wedding. They had planned a family portrait. They had planned a future. But they had not planned for me to still matter. I kept my hands folded in my lap. I did not stand. I did not rush forward. I only looked at the officiant, then at the leather folder in his hands, and thought of the night before. The rehearsal dinner. The seat. The sentence. "You're not sitting with our family." That was where it began. Or maybe that was just the moment I finally heard it clearly. The rehearsal dinner was held in the fellowship hall behind the church. Not fancy. Round tables with white covers, glass bowls of floating candles. A buffet line with baked chicken green beans and mashed potatoes that had already started to dry at the edges. It was the kind of room I knew well. I had planned baby showers in rooms like that. Church fundraisers. Retirement parties. Quiet little celebrations where women my age did most of the work and men praised the simplicity of it. By 6:30, everyone had arrived except the florist's assistant, who was late because of traffic. I knew that because I had taken the call. I had been taking calls all week. Vendor calls. Church calls. Last-minute questions. I wasn't the mother of the bride. I wasn't the event planner. I wasn't the one wearing white. Still, people kept calling me. That should have told me something. But usefulness can sound a lot like belonging when you want peace badly enough. My son Daniel looked handsome that evening. Navy blazer. White shirt open at the collar. The kind of careful, casual men wear when they want to seem relaxed and expensive at the same time. He kissed my cheek when he came in. "Hey, Mom." He smelled like cedar soap and aftershave. The same brand he had used since his divorce. That detail touched me more than it should have. Familiar things do that when the rest has shifted. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." He looked over my shoulder before I finished speaking. "Not rude." "Not exactly. Just preoccupied." That was how he had been for months. Not cold. Not absent. Just divided. His fiancée Elise arrived 2 minutes later with her mother and younger sister. They entered as a unit. That was the first thing I noticed. Not in matching clothes. Nothing obvious like that. But with the same posture. The same tight smiles. The same quick scan of the room to see what had been arranged properly. Elise hugged me lightly. One arm. Air near my cheek. "Hi, Linda, thank you again for everything." Her voice was smooth. Warm enough to pass? She had a way of speaking that made gratitude sound professionally managed. "You're welcome," I said. Her mother gave me a nod. Not unfriendly. Just measured. The kind women give when they're still deciding how much room you get in the picture. I had seen that look before. At school fundraisers. At neighborhood Christmas parties after my husband died. At couples' dinners where widows were treated kindly but seated carefully. I helped arrange the welcome table. Placed the programs in neat stacks. Adjusted the name cards after one of the cousins switched tables to sit near the bar. Nothing dramatic happened for the first hour. That is how these things usually go. 100 little signals. Each one deniable. Each one small enough to swallow. The men gathered near the coffee urn and talked about mortgage rates and golf. The younger women took photos by the floral arch. Daniel moved from group to group like someone trying to keep several small fires from becoming one large one. I watched him laugh at something Elise's brother said. Then glance toward me. Then look away. I told myself not to read into that. Women my age are always told not to read into things. As if the entire second half of our lives isn't built on noticing what other people need mean, hide, and avoid. Dinner was called around 7:30. People drifted toward their seats. I picked up my place card from the entry table, but mine wasn't there. I checked again. Then a third time slower. Nothing. I thought perhaps it had slipped under another card. I lifted 2, then 3. Still nothing. A volunteer from the church asked if I needed help. No, I said. My voice sounded normal. I'm sure it's around somewhere. That was when Elise appeared at my elbow. She was carrying a glass of sparkling water and smiling at someone across the room. Not at me. Then she turned. Oh. She said it so softly I almost missed it. I moved a few things around. That's fine, I said. I expected her to hand me a card. Instead, she kept holding the glass. There wasn't enough space at the family table, she said, and we wanted to keep both sides balanced. I waited. Sometimes silence gives people a chance to correct themselves. It did not work. She shifted the glass from one hand to the other. Then she said it. You're not sitting with our family. Just like that. No apology. No lower tone. No glance to check whether anyone had heard. The words landed with perfect calm. That was what made them so sharp. Our family. I looked past her toward the long table near the front. Daniel was there. Elise. Her parents. Her sister and brother-in-law. An aunt. A grandfather. There were empty chairs. 2 of them, in fact. Not enough space, I thought. I almost smiled. Instead, I asked, "Where would you like me to sit?" She pointed toward the back corner. A round table near the kitchen doors. 2 church friends. An elderly cousin who had trouble hearing. A teenage nephew playing on his phone. Overflow seating. Not punishment. That would have been easier. Just placement. I followed her gaze. Then nodded. All right. She looked relieved. That was the part I remember most clearly. Not triumph. Not embarrassment. Relief. As if she had expected resistance and was grateful not to be forced into ugliness. That taught me something too. People who redraw lines like to believe they are only managing space. They depend on your silence to keep their own reflection clean. I picked up a spare place card and wrote my own name. Slowly. I did it with a borrowed pen from the church secretary. Then I carried my plate to the back table. No one stopped me. No one said there must be a mistake. No one said, "Linda, come sit here." Daniel noticed. I know he did. His shoulders changed. Just slightly. He leaned toward Elise and she said something without turning her head. He stayed where he was. That hurt more than her sentence. Not because it surprised me. Because it didn't. At the back table, the church ladies were kind. Too kind. The way people are when they sense something wrong but prefer the softer version of it. Oh, good, one of them said, "You can sit with us." As though I had chosen this. As though I preferred the kitchen door opening every 40 seconds. As though I had always belonged to the category of women who help until the pictures begin. I smiled. I ate 3 bites of chicken and half a roll. Someone clinked a glass for speeches. Elise's father stood first. He welcomed everyone and talked about joining families. His voice filled the room with phrases like blessing unity and new beginnings. Daniel gave his own short toast. He thanked Elise. He thanked her parents. He thanked the church staff. Then he looked toward the back. Toward me? And said, "And thank you to everyone who helped make this weekend possible." Everyone. I lowered my eyes to my napkin. I had spent 32 years raising that man. I knew exactly when he was afraid. After dinner there was cake. A few more photos. I stepped outside for air and found Daniel near the side entrance staring at the parking lot. The night was cool. Someone had left a string of white lights on along the fence. He shoved his hands in his pockets when he saw me. "Mom." I waited. I know tonight felt a little off. A little off. I looked at him. Really looked. At the tightening around his eyes. At the flush high in his cheeks. At the way he still could not say the thing itself. "Did you know where I was sitting?" I asked. He exhaled through his nose. Not quite a sigh. "Elise has a lot on her plate." "That isn't what I asked." He looked away. I didn't want tension tonight. There it was. Not defense. Not denial. Management. He wanted peace more than truth. The same way his father used to. The same way men often do when the discomfort belongs to a woman they trust to survive it quietly. "I see," I said. "She's stressed," he said. "Her family is particular." I almost laughed. Particular? That clean little word people use when control is dressed for church. I asked, "And what am I?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "To her." He didn't answer. A car passed on the road beyond the lot. Its headlights swept across us and disappeared. "I just need tomorrow to go smoothly," he said. Tomorrow. Not us. Not you. Not what happened. Tomorrow. I nodded once. Then I said the sentence that made everything possible. "All right." He relaxed. Actually relaxed. His shoulders dropped. His jaw unclenched. He stepped forward and kissed my forehead as if we had settled something maturely. As if I had agreed to weather, not humiliation. "Thank you," he said. I didn't answer. When I got home, I hung my dress on the closet door instead of putting it away. A small thing. But I knew I would need to see it in the morning. Proof. I sat at my kitchen table with one lamp on. The same table where I had signed Daniel's college loan forms years ago. The same table where I had refinanced the house after my husband's stroke. The same table where paperwork had always found me. I looked at my hands. At the fine blue veins. At the indentation from my wedding band, still faint after all this time. Then I thought of Elise's sentence. Our family. I said it out loud once to hear how it sounded in my own house. Then I turned off the lamp and went to bed. The next morning I dressed carefully. Nothing dramatic. Nothing defiant. Soft makeup. Pearl earrings. Blue dress. The kind of woman nobody notices until something requires steadiness. By the time I entered the church, I had already made one decision. I would not beg for my place. I would not force a scene. And I would not forget. I took my seat where the usher directed me. 3 rows back. Not the front. Not quite the back. A compromise seat. Respectable distance. The organ began. Guests rose. The bridesmaids entered. Then Elise on her father's arm. Beautiful. Composed. Certain. The ceremony opened exactly as it should have. Prayer. Readings. A quiet laugh when Daniel nearly dropped his ring card. Then came the pause. The officiant frowned at the folder, turned a page, then another, and said the words that changed the room. "We can't continue without her signature." I felt every face turn before I lifted my head. And in that moment I understood that the seat they had given me was temporary. The name beneath everything was not. I saw my name before anyone said it out loud. Not on a screen. Not announced. Just there on the top corner of a document the officiant held too carefully to ignore. Linda Carter. Printed clean. Centered. Permanent. The kind of ink that doesn't ask permission to be noticed. The officiant cleared his throat once, then again. He wasn't nervous. He was recalibrating. "There's a difference." "I'm sorry," he said, looking toward Daniel first, then Elise. "There's a required authorization missing." Elise stepped forward. "What kind of authorization?" Her voice stayed even. But her fingers tightened around her bouquet. The stems bent slightly. "Final custodial and asset release signature," he said. "It's listed under..." He stopped, then looked directly at me. "Ms. Carter." No one spoke. You could hear the faint hum of the air system. The shift of fabric as people adjusted in their seats. Daniel turned slowly. "Not surprised." "Not entirely." "Just late, Mom," he said. It wasn't loud, but it carried. That word always does. I didn't stand immediately. There is power in timing, especially when people have decided you don't have any. I placed my hands on the armrests, then stood, smoothly. No rush. No hesitation. Just a woman getting up when her name has been called. The aisle felt longer than it had before. Or maybe it always feels that way when you walk it alone. No music now. No soft smiles. Just eyes. So many eyes. Some curious, some confused. A few already calculating. I reached the front and stopped beside the officiant. He handed me the folder without a word. Professional. Respectful. He had already understood what the room had not. I opened it. I didn't need to read everything. I knew this structure. I had built it. Months ago. Quietly. Carefully. Without anyone asking me to. Without anyone thinking I would. Because I always handled things. That had been my role. Useful, reliable, background. Until background becomes foundation. Elise leaned slightly toward Daniel. "What is this?" she whispered. He didn't answer. He was looking at the papers in my hands. Really looking. For the first time. "It's standard," I said calmly. "Not defensive. Not sharp. Just factual." "What is?" Elise asked. Her tone had changed. Not softer. Just thinner. "This wedding," I said, "requires final authorization on several shared financial and property arrangements." She blinked. "That doesn't make sense. We already signed everything." I nodded once. "You signed your portion." Daniel finally spoke. "What portion, Mom?" I turned one page and held it slightly toward him. "Not fully offering it. Just enough." "The joint trust," I said. "The down payment release for the house." His face shifted. "Recognition. Slow. Uncomfortable. And the vendor guarantees I added, including this venue." Elise's mother stood up from the front row. Just slightly. Enough to be seen. "What exactly are you saying?" she asked. Her voice was polite, but no longer warm. I looked at her. Then back at the page. "I'm saying," I replied, "that several components of today depend on documents still under my name." No one spoke. The word "depend" hung in the air longer than it should have. Elise stepped closer now. Not quite confronting, but no longer distant. "Why would anything be under your name?" she asked. It wasn't accusatory. Not yet. It was disbelief trying to find ground. I met her eyes. Because now she was looking at me directly. "For the same reason the florist called me last night," I said. "And the caterer. And the church office." Daniel inhaled slowly. "Like someone stepping into cold water." "You handled it," he said. Not a question. A realization. "I made sure it would work," I said. There was a difference. He heard it. Elise didn't. She shook her head slightly. "No, we worked with a planner." "Yes," I said, "you did." I let that sit. Then added, "She called me every time something needed to be secured." Her grip on the bouquet loosened. Just a little. "In the house?" Daniel asked. I turned another page. "Escrow is contingent on final fund transfer," I said, "which I guaranteed." He closed his eyes for a second. Just one. Then opened them again. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked. There it was. Not gratitude. Not anger. Confusion. I considered the question. Then answered it honestly. "You didn't ask." The room shifted. Subtly. Like something invisible had been moved 3 inches to the left. Enough to feel wrong. Not enough to name immediately. Elise's father stepped forward now. Measured. Controlled. "Surely this is just a formality," he said. "Of course," I replied. Then I closed the folder. Softly. The sound carried more than it should have. "All we need is your signature," the officiant said gently. I nodded. I held the pen he offered. Familiar weight. Smooth barrel. Black ink. I have signed documents my entire adult life. School forms. Medical releases. Loan agreements. End-of-life papers. Always for someone else. Always to keep something moving. I looked down at the line. My name was already printed beneath it. Waiting. Elise watched my hand. So did Daniel. So did everyone. This is what power looks like when it surprises people. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a pause where they expected motion. "Is there a problem?" Elise asked. Her voice was steady again, but her shoulders had tightened. "No," I said. Then I placed the pen down on the folder. Carefully. Not abruptly. Just not signing. Not yet. The silence deepened. This time it had weight. Daniel stepped closer. "Mom," he said quietly, "what's going on?" I looked at him. At the boy I had raised. At the man who had stood at a table the night before and let someone else decide where I belonged. "I'm thinking," I said. Elise's mother crossed her arms. "About what?" she asked. I turned my head slightly toward her. "About where I'm supposed to sit," I said. That landed. Not loudly, but precisely. Elise blinked again, then looked at Daniel, then back at me. "That was just seating," she said. "Yes," I replied. "Logistics," she added. Of course. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. This isn't the time, he said. He wasn't wrong. But that didn't make him right. When, as I asked? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because moments like this don't arrive politely scheduled. They arrive when something breaks alignment and forces everything else to reveal itself. I didn't mean anything by it, Elise said. Her tone softened now. Not performative. Careful. We just had to make it work. I studied her face. For the first time I saw uncertainty there. Real uncertainty. Not about the wedding. About me. That was new. I nodded slowly. I understand, I said. And I did. That was the problem. Understanding makes it easier to accept things you shouldn't. I don't think you do, she said. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. Then explain it to me, I replied. She hesitated. Only a second. But enough. We needed balance, she said. Our families. Our families, I repeated gently. She stopped. Daniel closed his eyes again. This time longer. When he opened them, he looked tired. Not angry. Not defensive. Just aware. Mom, he said, can we talk? I nodded. Of course. I handed the folder back to the officiant. Just a moment, I said. He accepted it without question. Because he understood something the rest of them were still learning. The ceremony was not what needed to continue. The conversation was... Daniel stepped slightly to the side. I followed. Elise hesitated, then came with us. We stood just out of the direct line of the aisle, close enough to be seen, far enough to be separate. I didn't know, Daniel said. He spoke first. Quickly. I didn't know how much you had. I know, I said. He stopped. Because I wasn't accusing him. That confused him more. Elise looked between us. I thought everything was handled, she said. It is, I replied. Then why? Because I handled it, I said. Not louder. Just clearer. Silence again. Then Daniel asked the only question that mattered now. What do you need? I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time since the night before, I didn't see avoidance. I saw readiness. Not perfect. But present. I let the moment stretch. Not to punish. To decide. I need to understand something, I said. He nodded. What? I glanced at Elise. Then back at him. When you picture your family, I said, where do I sit? That question did not belong to paperwork. Or money. Or logistics. It belonged to identity. And suddenly that was the only thing left in the room. Elise's breath caught. Just slightly. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. Because now there was no way to answer without choosing. And for the first time that weekend, he understood that silence was also a choice. Daniel looked at me like he was trying to answer a question he had avoided for years. Not because it was difficult, because it had never been required before. When I picture my family, I said again, quieter now, where do I sit? He swallowed. His eyes moved briefly toward Elise. Then back to me. That small movement told me everything. Not betrayal. Not even preference. Just alignment. He had already adjusted his center. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. You're my mom, he said. The safest answer. The smallest one. I know that, I replied. My voice stayed calm. But that's not what I asked. He exhaled slowly. I watched the moment he realized there was no version of this that stayed easy. Not anymore. Elise stepped in. Carefully. I think we're overcomplicating this, she said. Her tone was controlled again. Measured. The version she used when things needed to be smoothed over without being changed. It was just seating, she added. There wasn't space. I held her gaze. There were 2 empty chairs. She hesitated. Just long enough? Then she said, those were for my aunt and grandfather. They arrived later, I said. They still had seats. Daniel closed his eyes. Not in frustration. In recognition. He had seen it too. He just hadn't named it. I didn't want a problem, he said. There it was again. Not truth. Management. I nodded. I understand that. And I did. Peace can look like kindness from a distance. Up close, it often looks like someone else absorbing the cost. I didn't think it mattered where you sat, he added. That one landed deeper. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest. I let that sit between us. Then I asked, would it have mattered if it was her mother? Elise stiffened. Daniel didn't answer. That was the answer. We stood there in a small pocket of quiet while a room full of people waited for something they didn't understand. A wedding paused for paperwork. That was the surface story. Underneath, something else was being negotiated. Not money. Not documents. Position. I should have said something, Daniel said finally. He didn't look at me when he said it. I didn't want to make it worse. I watched his hands. They were still. Too still. He had made this decision already. Just not consciously. Elise, I said, turning to her. She met my eyes. Careful again. Yes. Did you think I would say no? The question surprised her. What? Did you think I would refuse to help? I asked. Her mouth parted slightly. No, she said. Then why didn't you think I deserved a seat at that table? That was the first moment she didn't have a prepared tone. She looked at Daniel. Then back at me. I didn't think of it like that, she said. That was the truth. And it was worse than intention. Because intention can be argued. Absence of thought cannot. I believe you, I said. She blinked. Not expecting agreement. Then, but that's the problem, I added. Silence. Real silence this time. The kind that makes people listen. I've spent a long time making sure things worked, I said. For you, I nodded toward Daniel. For this, I gestured slightly around us. And somewhere along the way that became invisible. Daniel looked up. Not invisible, he said quickly. Just assumed. I held his gaze. Yes. That word stayed between us. Heavy. Clean. Accurate. Assumed. The most dangerous kind of disappearance. Because it feels normal. Elise shifted her weight. I didn't know the details, she said. That's not what I'm asking, I replied. She hesitated. Then more quietly, I thought, your role was different. Different how? She took a breath. Like someone stepping onto uncertain ground. My family is very structured, she said. We have expectations. I waited. She continued. Certain things are handled within the immediate unit. And I'm not part of that unit, I said. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Daniel spoke instead. She didn't mean it like that. I looked at him, then asked, how did she mean it? He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because now he understood the problem wasn't tone. It was placement. And placement is harder to defend. I thought I was protecting the day, he said. That's what I told myself. And what were you protecting it from, I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Then quietly conflict. I nodded. And who would that conflict have been between? He looked at Elise. Then at me. Everyone, he said. I almost smiled. Not because it was wrong. Because it was incomplete. Not everyone, I said. Just the people who weren't willing to move. That landed. Elise looked down briefly. Then back up. I didn't realize it would feel like exclusion, she said. Her voice was softer now. Less managed. More human. It didn't feel like exclusion, I said. It was. No anger. No accusation. Just clarity. She absorbed that. Slowly. Daniel stepped closer. Mom, he said, I'm sorry. He meant it. I could hear it. That mattered. But it wasn't enough on its own. Because apologies come after impact. Not instead of it. I know, I said. And I did. But knowing doesn't undo. It just informs what comes next. Behind us, someone shifted in the pews. A cough. A whisper. Time was passing. The officiant remained still. Professional. Waiting. He knew not to rush this, because rushing would break something that couldn't be repaired later. Elise's mother took a step closer. Not interrupting. Just present. Her expression had changed. Less certainty. More calculation? What exactly needs to happen here, she asked. Direct now. Practical. I turned slightly toward her. Nothing complicated, I said. Just a signature. And then we continue. Yes, she nodded. Relief flickered across her face. Then I don't see the issue. I looked at her. Then back at Daniel. Then at Elise. That depends, I said. On what she asked. I paused. Not for effect. For accuracy. On whether anything has changed. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? I met his eyes. I mean, do you still think it doesn't matter where I sit? That was the question now. Not the paperwork. Not the ceremony. Not the guests. Just that. Position. Recognition. Place. Elise answered before he could. No, she said. Her voice was quiet, but steady. It matters. I held her gaze. Waiting. She continued. I didn't think it did, she said. But I was wrong. That was the first honest shift. Not perfect. Not complete. But real. Daniel looked at her. Then at me. Something in him settled. Not resolved, but aligned. I was wrong too, he said. I nodded once. Okay. The word surprised them. Not because it was dramatic. Because it wasn't. Because it meant I wasn't going to stretch this into something larger than it needed to be. But I also wasn't going to shrink it back into nothing. I reached for the folder. The officiant handed it to me again. The pen followed. I looked down at the signature line. My name. Still waiting. Still required. I held the pen above the page, then stopped. One more pause. Not for them. For myself. For the woman who sat at the back table the night before and told herself it was just one evening. It wasn't. It had never been. It was a pattern. And patterns don't change unless something interrupts them. I looked up. At the reception, I said I won't be sitting in the back. Daniel nodded immediately. You won't. Elise followed. No, she said, you won't. I studied her face. Not for perfection. For sincerity. It was there. New. Unpracticed. But there. I nodded once. Then lowered the pen. Signed my name. Clean. Steady. Final. The officiant exhaled almost imperceptibly. Then smiled. Thank you, he said. He closed the folder. Turned back to the room. And with practiced ease resumed the ceremony as if nothing had happened. But everything had. I stepped back. Not to the front row. Not to the back. Just back. Daniel took his place again. Elise beside him. Their hands found each other. This time not for appearance. For balance. The vows began. Words about commitment. About partnership. About building something together. I listened. Not as someone outside of it. Not entirely inside either. But differently now. Because something had been named. And once something is named, it doesn't disappear again. After the ceremony, as guests began to stand, Daniel glanced toward me. Not quickly. Not by accident. Directly. And this time, he didn't look away. People always think the ceremony is the hardest part. It isn't. It's what comes after. The space where everyone pretends nothing complicated just happened. The receiving line formed near the altar. Elise's family stood first. Her parents. Her sister and brother-in-law. Then Daniel and Elise together, hands still linked. I didn't move right away. I watched. Not the guests. Them. How they stood. How close they leaned toward each other. How Elise adjusted her smile depending on who approached. How Daniel's hand rested at the small of her back, steady, almost protective. They were learning each other in real time. That part was real. That part always is. I stepped into line when the first wave of guests thinned. No one stopped me. No one redirected me. That was new. Elise's mother saw me first. Her expression shifted. Just slightly. Enough to register. Linda, she said. My name landed differently now. More careful. More aware. I nodded. Congratulations, I said. Simple. Clean. She held my hand for a second longer than necessary. Not warmth. Acknowledgement. A small correction. Her husband followed. Thank you for everything, he said. He chose the word carefully. Everything. Not help. Not support. Everything. I met his eyes. You're welcome. We both understood that sentence carried more weight now. Then I moved to Daniel. He pulled me into a brief hug. Not the quick one from the night before. Something firmer. More grounded. I'm glad you're here, he said quietly. I didn't answer. Not because I disagreed. Because I was measuring the distance between glad and necessary. There's a difference. Elise stood just beside him. For a second she didn't move. Then she stepped forward. Not fully. Just enough. Thank you, she said. Her voice was low. Private. I mean it. I looked at her. Really looked this time. Without the filter of assumption. She held my gaze. Didn't look away. That mattered. You're welcome, I said. Same words, different meaning. We stood there for a second longer than expected. Then the next guest stepped forward. And the moment passed. The reception was held in a modest event hall 10 minutes from the church. Nothing extravagant. String lights across the ceiling. Round tables with ivory linens. A small dance floor. A bar in the corner with 2 bartenders who moved efficiently but never smiled too much. Middle-class elegance. The kind that tries to look effortless but requires a lot of quiet coordination. I arrived early. Habit. I always arrive early. It gives me time to understand a room before it fills. The seating chart stood near the entrance. Large board. Names printed neatly. I walked toward it without hesitation. Not rushed. Just direct. I found my name. Not in the back. Not at the edge. Table 3. Near the front. Close to the couple. Close enough to be seen. Not so close that it felt like a correction. More like inclusion. Intentional. I stood there for a moment. Looking at it. Not because I doubted it. Because I wanted to feel what it meant. Then I moved inside. Table 3 was set simply. White plates. Folded napkins. A small arrangement of roses and eucalyptus. 4 seats already filled. 2 women from church. A cousin from Daniel's side. And an empty chair. Mine. I placed my purse on the back of it. Sat down. No one commented. No one made a show of it. That was important. Correction without performance. Respect without announcement. The best kind. Guests filtered in. Laughter rose. Glasses clinked. The band tested their sound system with a low hum of guitar and piano. I watched Daniel and Elise make their entrance. Applause. Smiles. They looked good together. Balanced. That surprised me. Not because I doubted them. Because I hadn't seen them clearly until now. When power shifts, perspective changes. You start seeing people as they are. Not as you needed them to be. Dinner was served. Salmon. Chicken. Vegetarian pasta. Standard options. Conversations filled the table. Light. Careful. Occasionally drifting toward the ceremony. No one mentioned the pause. Of course they didn't. That's how these things work. The most important moment is the one nobody names. Halfway through dinner, Daniel stood for a toast. He tapped his glass lightly. The room quieted. I want to thank everyone for being here, he began. His voice was steady, not rehearsed. I know weddings are about 2 people, he continued. But they're also about the people who made those 2 people possible. A few nods around the room. Soft smiles. He glanced toward Elise. Then back to the crowd. I didn't say this last night, he said. A small shift. Barely noticeable. But there. I should have. He paused. Not long. Just enough. Then his eyes found me. Direct. No hesitation this time. My mom, he said, has been the reason a lot of things in my life worked. Silence. Real silence. I didn't always say that, he continued. I didn't always see it clearly. A few people shifted in their seats. Not uncomfortable. Just attentive. But I do now, he said. And I'm grateful. That word again. Grateful. He held my gaze for 1 second longer than necessary. Then lifted his glass. To family, he said. To all of it. Glasses lifted. A soft ripple of agreement moved through the room. I raised mine. Just slightly. Not high. Not low. Exactly where it felt right. Elise stood next. Her toast was shorter, more controlled. "I want to thank everyone for welcoming me," she said. Her tone was polished again, but something underneath it had changed. Less certainty, more awareness. "And I want to say something to Linda," she added. A small intake of breath moved through the room. Not loud, but present. She turned toward me, fully. No half angles. No divided posture. "I didn't understand everything you were doing," she said. "I do now." She paused. Not for effect. For accuracy. "And I'm sorry," she said. Simple. Direct. No explanation. No justification. Just that. I nodded once. That was enough. For now. The rest of the evening unfolded the way these things do. Music. Dancing. Conversations that started shallow and deepened slightly after a second drink. At one point, Daniel asked me to dance. We moved slowly. Not awkward. Not perfect. Just familiar. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "You?" He nodded. "Better." We didn't say more. We didn't need to. Across the room I saw Elise watching us. Not with suspicion. Not with discomfort. With attention. Learning. That was new. Later, as the night began to settle, I stepped outside for air. The same instinct as the night before. The same need for space. The difference was in how it felt. Elise joined me a minute later. She stood beside me. Not too close. Not distant. Balanced. "I didn't grow up like this," she said. I waited. She continued. "My family, we're careful about structure." I nodded. "I can see that." She smiled slightly. Not defensive. Just acknowledging. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she said. "I know," I replied. She looked at me. "Do you?" "Yes." That surprised her. "Then why?" "Because doing the right thing for your system isn't always the right thing for people outside it," I said. She absorbed that. Quietly. "I didn't see you that way," she said. As outside. I turned toward her. "But you placed me there." She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just nodded. That was enough. Growth doesn't need a speech. It needs recognition. We stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, "I want to do this differently." I looked at her. Not assessing. Just listening. "Then you will," I said. She exhaled. Not relief. Not entirely. Something closer to possibility. We went back inside together. Not side by side. Not separate. Just moving in the same direction. At my table, my chair was still there. Exactly where I had left it. No one had moved it. No one had filled it. It waited. Not because it had to. Because it belonged to me now. I sat down. And for the first time that weekend, it felt like I had chosen where I was. The next morning was quiet. Weddings always end like that. After the music. After the lights. After the version of everyone that only exists for a few hours. What's left is the ordinary. And the ordinary tells the truth. I woke up later than usual. Sunlight was already filling the kitchen when I came downstairs. The dress I had worn the night before was still hanging on the chair. Not in the closet. Not put away. Still present. I made coffee. Sat at the table. The same table. The one that had held years of decisions no one else saw. I didn't turn on the television. Didn't check my phone. I just sat. And let everything settle into place. Not replaying. Not analyzing. Just placing. There's a moment after something shifts where your mind tries to rush in and explain it. I didn't let it. I let the silence do its work. Around 9, my phone vibrated. Daniel. I watched it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. "Hi." "Hey," he said. His voice sounded different. Not heavy. Not strained. Clear. "You awake?" "I am." Pause. "I wanted to come by," he said. "With Elise." "I considered that." "Okay. We won't stay long." "You can stay as long as you like." Another pause. "All right," he said. They arrived 20 minutes later. No announcement. No delay. Just a quiet knock on the door. When I opened it, they stood close together. Not touching, but aligned. That was new. "Hi," Elise said. "Hi." Daniel stepped forward first. A brief hug. Then Elise. Not one arm this time. Both. Still careful. But real. "Come in," I said. They followed me into the kitchen. I poured coffee without asking. 3 cups. Placed them on the table. They sat across from me. Not side by side. Facing me. That mattered. Daniel spoke first. "I've been thinking about yesterday." I nodded. "I have too." He looked down at his hands, then back up. "I didn't realize how much I had let you carry," he said. The word was chosen carefully. Carry. Not help. Not support. Carry. "I didn't ask," he added. "No," I said. "You didn't." No accusation. Just agreement. He exhaled slowly. "I think I stopped seeing it because it always worked," he said. That was honest. "And when things work, you stop asking why I replied." He nodded. Elise listened. Quiet. Attentive. "I also didn't step in last night," he said. "At the dinner." "I know," I said. "I saw you." He winced slightly. Not dramatic. Just recognition landing where it should. "I told myself it wasn't a big deal," he said. "That it was just seating." I looked at him. And now, he didn't hesitate. It wasn't just seating. Good. That was progress. Not apology. Understanding. Elise spoke next. "I need to say something too." I turned to her. "I assumed things about you," she said. Her voice was steady. No performance. Just effort. "I thought I understood where everyone fit," she continued. And I didn't question it. I waited. Because she wasn't finished. "I didn't see what you were doing," she said. "And I didn't think about what that meant." She paused. Then added, "That's on me." I nodded. Not forgiving. Not rejecting. Just receiving. "Why didn't you ask?" I said. She blinked. "Ask what?" "Ask who was holding things together," I said. She looked down. Then back up. "I thought I knew," she said. "That's the problem with certainty," I replied. It closes doors before you even see them. She absorbed that. Slowly. "I don't want to do that again," she said. I believed her. Not because of her words, because of how she was sitting. Still. Present. Listening. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "We want to do things differently," he said. I met his eyes. "What does that mean?" He didn't rush. "Good. I don't want you on the outside of anything," he said. Simple. Clear. Late. But real. Elise nodded. "Not just included," she said. Respected. That word mattered. More than included. Included can be managed. Respected has to be earned and given. I took a sip of coffee. Let the warmth settle. Then I asked the question that mattered now. Differently? How? They looked at each other. Not for permission. For alignment. Daniel spoke. "We're closing on the house next month," he said. I nodded. "I know. You don't need to be on any of it," he added. There it was. The shift. From dependence to independence. From assumption to awareness. "I wasn't planning to be," I said. He smiled slightly. Relief. Not because he wanted distance. Because he understood boundaries. Elise leaned forward. "We want you involved," she said. "But not because we need you to carry things." "Because you matter," Daniel added. I held their gaze. Both of them. And for the first time I saw something balanced there. Not perfect. Not settled. But balanced. That's all relationships really need. Not perfection. Balance. "I appreciate that," I said. And I did. But appreciation is not the same as acceptance. That takes time. They both seemed to understand that. Good. We sat in silence for a moment. Not awkward. Just full. Then Daniel asked, "Are you okay?" I considered the question. Carefully. "I am," I said. That was true. Not because everything had been fixed. Because something had been clarified. That's often more important. Elise stood first. "We should go," she said. "Your parents are expecting us." Daniel nodded. They both stood. No rush. No tension. Just movement. At the door, Elise paused, turned back. I meant what I said last night, she said. I know, I replied. She nodded once, then stepped outside. Daniel lingered a second longer. I'm going to do better, he said. I looked at him. I know you are. He smiled. Small. Then left. I closed the door. Locked it. Not out of fear. Out of habit. I walked back to the kitchen. Sat down again. The same chair. The same table. But something was different. Not the room. Not the light. Me. I looked at the empty coffee cups. 3 of them. Then at my hands. Resting. Not holding anything. Not carrying. Just resting. That was new. Later that afternoon, I went through my paperwork. Not urgently. Not defensively. Just intentionally. I removed my name from the documents that no longer needed it. Signed the final transfers. Closed the loops. Not because I had to. Because I chose to. There's a difference. When I finished, I placed everything neatly in a folder. Closed it. Set it aside. Done. That word felt different now. Not like an ending. Like a completion. That evening, Daniel texted, a simple message. Dinner next week. I looked at it for a moment. Then replied, yes. No hesitation. No overthinking. Just, yes. Because relationships don't repair in one conversation. They rebuild in small, consistent choices, and this was one of them. I set my phone down. Looked around the room. The same walls. The same furniture. The same life. But with a different center. Not shifted by others. Not dependent on placement. Just mine. A week later, we met for dinner. Not a celebration. Not a formal gathering. Just dinner. That mattered. Ordinary spaces reveal more than staged ones. They chose a small restaurant 10 minutes from my house. Nothing trendy. Nothing loud. Soft lighting. Wood tables. A place where conversations don't need to compete with music. I arrived first. Again. Habit. I asked for a table near the window. Sat down. Ordered water. Waited. Not anxiously. Just present. I watched people come in. Couples. Families. A woman about my age sitting alone reading something on her phone. No one looked at her twice. That's how it works. You become invisible slowly. Not because you disappear. Because people stop expecting you to be central. Daniel and Elise walked in together. He saw me first. Raised a hand. Small gesture. But direct. They came over. No hesitation. No scanning the room first. That was new. Hi, Daniel said. Hi. Elise smiled. Hi, Linda. We sat. No one rushed to fill the silence. That was different, too. Before there would have been small talk. Now there was space. Daniel picked up the menu. Then put it down. I don't want this to be weird, he said. I almost smiled. It doesn't have to be, I replied. Elise leaned forward slightly. It already was, she said. Honest. Not defensive. I appreciated that. We ordered. Simple meals. Nothing elaborate. The waitress left. Silence returned. Daniel broke it. I've been thinking about what you said, he began. I didn't interrupt. About where you sit, he added. I nodded. And he looked at Elise briefly. Then back at me. I think I was letting things be decided without asking if they should be, he said. That was accurate. And now I asked, I don't want to do that anymore. Good. Clear. Not dramatic. Elise spoke next. I grew up in a house where everything had a place, she said. I listened. People too, she added. That line held more than she intended. Or maybe exactly what she intended. And if something didn't fit, she continued, we adjusted it. I nodded. I can see that. She held my gaze. I thought I was doing that last week, she said. Adjusting. And now I asked. She paused. Then said, now I think I was simplifying. That was better. Closer to the truth. People aren't seating charts, I said. No, she agreed. They're not. Daniel shifted in his chair. I should have said something that night, he said again. Not repeating. Clarifying. I keep coming back to that, he added. I looked at him. That's because it mattered, I said. He nodded. I didn't want to create a problem. And what happened instead, I asked. He didn't hesitate. I let one happen. Yes, that was it. The waitress returned with drinks. Placed them down. Left. The rhythm of the room continued around us. Forks. Glasses. Low voices. Nothing dramatic. Just life moving forward. I've been thinking about boundaries, Daniel said. That word again. Important. Often misused. What kind, I asked. The kind where I don't let things slide just because they're uncomfortable, he said. I held his gaze. That will be new for you. He smiled slightly. I know. Elise added, it will be new for me too. I turned to her. In what way? She took a breath. I don't want to assume I know where people belong anymore, she said. That's a start, I replied. She nodded. I also don't want to build something that only works if certain people stay quiet, she added. That was more than a start. That was awareness. I let that sit. Then I said, good. No praise, no reward. Just acknowledgement. Because growth doesn't need applause. It needs consistency. Our food arrived. We ate. Talked about smaller things. Work. The house closing. A neighbor, Daniel, had issues with over a fence line. Normal conversation. But something underneath it had shifted. Not tension. Alignment. Subtle. But real. Halfway through the meal, Daniel said, we're having people over next month. I looked up. A small dinner, he added. Just close family. I waited. Not assuming. Not filling in the blanks. We want you there, he said. Not as an afterthought. As a statement. Elise nodded. At the table, she added, I almost smiled. Not because it was amusing. Because it was specific. And specificity shows intention. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it. Not because I needed the invitation. Because I chose to accept it. There's a difference. After dinner, we stood outside the restaurant. The air was cooler than I expected. Spring turning slowly. Daniel put his hands in his pockets. Then took them out again. Small, restless movement. Thank you for meeting us, he said. You're welcome. Elise looked at me. Thank you for being honest, she said. I considered that. I wasn't always, I replied. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? I've spent a long time making things easier, I said. For everyone. Daniel nodded. I know. I won't do that the same way anymore, I added. Not a warning. A statement. Elise held my gaze. I don't want you to, she said. Good. That mattered. We stood there for a moment. No one rushing to leave. No one forcing closure. Just standing. Then Daniel stepped forward and hugged me. Again, not quick. Not distracted. Present. Elise followed. Same. We said our goodbyes. They walked to their car. I walked to mine. No one looked back. Not because we didn't care. Because we didn't need to check. Something had settled. Not finished. But stable. I drove home with the window slightly open. Cool air moving through the car. Clearing space. At a stoplight, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. Not to adjust anything. Just to look. The same face. The same lines. The same woman. But not in the same position. That's what had changed. Not who I was. Where I placed myself, and where I allowed others to place me. That shift doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It just holds. When I got home, I didn't go straight inside. I stood in the driveway for a moment. Quiet. Still. Then I walked in, turned on the light, and set my keys down on the table. Exactly where I wanted them. A month later, I walked into their house without knocking twice. Not because I felt entitled. Because I had been invited that way. Just come in, Daniel had said. Don't wait at the door. It sounds small. It isn't. Doors tell you where you stand. I stepped inside and paused just long enough to take in the space. New furniture. Neutral colors. Carefully chosen pieces that tried to look effortless. A house still deciding what kind of life it would hold. Mom Daniel called from the kitchen. "In here," I answered. I followed his voice. Elise stood at the counter arranging plates. She looked up when I entered. No hesitation. No recalculation. Just recognition. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Daniel came over and kissed my cheek. Same cedar scent. Familiar. But no longer the only thing anchoring me. "Dinner's almost ready," he said. "I can help," I replied. Elise shook her head lightly. "It's okay," she said, "just sit." I noticed the table then. Set for 4. Not 3. Not adjusted. 4. My place was already there. No name card. No label. Just a setting. Plate. Glass. Fork aligned with quiet intention. I took my seat. No one commented. That was the difference. Inclusion without announcement. Respect without correction. We ate. Conversation moved easily. Not forced. Not overly careful. They told me about the house closing. Minor issues with paperwork. A delay that had frustrated them both. I listened. Offered input when it mattered. Stayed quiet when it didn't. Balance. That's what this was now. At one point, Elise asked, "Can I get your opinion on something?" I looked at her. "Of course." She hesitated. Then said, "The trust documents. I want to understand them better." Not because she needed control. Because she wanted clarity. That was new. Daniel glanced at her. Then at me. I nodded. "We can go through them," I said. She relaxed slightly. "Thank you." No defensiveness. No assumption. Just openness. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Soft light. A lamp in the corner. No television. Just space. Daniel sat across from me. Elise beside him. Not between us. Beside him. Aligned. But not blocking. "I've been thinking about something," Daniel said. I waited. "About how easy it is to confuse peace with avoidance," he added. I almost smiled. "You're not wrong." He nodded. "I did that for a long time." "Yes," I said. "No need to soften it." He didn't flinch. That mattered. "I don't want to do that anymore," he said. "I know." Elise leaned forward. "I don't either," she said. I looked at her. "You won't," I replied. Not because I was certain. Because I had seen enough to believe it. Silence settled again. Comfortable. Not empty. Just complete. After a while I stood. "I should go," I said. No one tried to stop me. That's another form of respect. Letting people leave when they choose. At the door, Elise spoke. "Linda." I turned. "Yes." She took a step closer. Not rushed. Not rehearsed. "I'm glad you're here," she said. Not polite. Not automatic. Intentional. I held her gaze. "So am I," replied. Daniel opened the door. Cool evening air moved inside. I stepped out. Walked down the small path to my car. When I reached it, I didn't get in right away. I looked back at the house. Lights on. Figures moving inside. A life continuing. Not centered around me. Not excluding me. Just including me where it made sense. That's the difference most people miss. Belonging isn't about being at the center. It's about not being pushed to the edges. I got into the car. Started the engine. Sat there for a moment. Then drove home. The road was quiet. Streetlights spaced evenly. The kind of drive that gives you room to think without forcing you to. I didn't replay the past. I didn't rewrite it either. I let it stay exactly as it was. Because that's the only way lessons hold. At a red light, I thought about that moment in the church. The pause. The pen in my hand. The room waiting. It could have gone differently. Louder. Sharper. More final. But it didn't. Because this was never about winning. It was about being seen. And then deciding what to do with that visibility. When I pulled into my driveway, I turned off the engine and sat for a second. Quiet. Still. Then I stepped out. Walked inside. Closed the door behind me. The house felt the same. But not empty. Just mine. I set my keys on the table. The same place. Consistent. Intentional. Then I turned off the light in the kitchen. stood there in the dim for a moment, and thought about everything that had shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but permanently. If you've ever found yourself sitting at the edge of your own life, wondering when you were moved there, pay attention. Not to what people say, but to where they place you. And more importantly, to where you allow yourself to stay. Because sometimes the most important decision you make is not whether you're invited to the table. It's whether you choose to remain standing in the back. If this story felt familiar in any way, if you've ever been quietly repositioned without being asked, take a moment today to notice your own place and decide if it still fits.